Running a Fever, Episode 391, Aging Reversed, Part 4, Longevity Genes. Welcome to Running a Fever, a podcast about fitness, diet, and medicine. My name is Michael Davis. My goal is to live a long, healthy, happy, active life by loving my life enough to make it last as long as possible. And long life is what this series called Aging Reversed is all about. What if aging were really just a disease that could be treated? What if the fountain of youth consisted of behaviors and medication? What if you could live 150 years, or even forever? You won't find answers to those questions in this series, but we will talk about how this could all come about, some of the research going into it, and what resources are available right now to lengthen your life scientifically. Thus far, we've talked about classifying aging as a disease and about the information theory of aging. In this episode, we're going to dig into the roles of sirtuins, NAD, and other longevity genes in extending lifespan. Sirtuins are genes that act like worker bees to repair DNA. The name comes from SIR2, the first one that was discovered. There are 7 known sirtuins. SIR2 stands for Silent Mating Type Information Regulation 2, which is the gene responsible for cellular regulation in yeast. In fact, 23% of yeast DNA is the same as humans, which is why scientists like to use yeast to study human longevity. What's so important about sirtuins? They sit at the top of cellular control systems. They tell our cells what to do, controlling reproduction and DNA repair. They're like orchestra conductors that make the horn section hush so the woodwinds can be heard, and vice versa when the horn section should be heard. When DNA is broken, everything else stops, and the resources are devoted to repairs, especially reproduction, since that involves copying DNA, and you don't want to copy broken DNA. When the repairs are done, sirtuins enable reproduction again and go back to work maintaining DNA. Sirtuins control all of this as part of the epigenome. You may recall that the epigenome is the dynamic information that reads the static digital data in DNA and tells it what to do by switching genes on or off. Sirtuins and the epigenome are the boss of DNA for sure. David Sinclair, author of the book Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, calls this process of reallocating resources in times of stress buckling down. When our bodies are buckling down, we're in survival mode. By controlling this, sirtuins protect us against diseases commonly associated with age: diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's disease, osteoporosis, and cancer. They reduce the inflammation that causes atherosclerosis, metabolic disorders, ulcerative colitis, arthritis, and asthma. They reduce muscle wasting and macular degeneration. So, if we've got these sirtuins and they're so great, why do we age? It's a question of the amount of stress involved. I'm not talking about a rough day at the office, but stress as in a physical sense. For example, falling down a flight of stairs. Stress to DNA can be caused by a number of things, none of which, as far as I can tell, directly relate to aging. Some examples are environmental factors like ultraviolet radiation and chemotherapy. Whatever causes the stress that causes DNA damage, if the damage is too great and overwhelms the sirtuins, chaos ensues and the sirtuins can go nuts and start turning the wrong genes on and off. If the DNA is not repaired completely or timely, aging occurs, along with all of the diseases I mentioned earlier. Sirtuins also require a molecule called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, which is a great name for a girl, by the way. We call her NAD for short. As we age, we lose NAD and our sirtuins become less effective and are more easily overwhelmed, leading to all the nasty diseases I mentioned earlier. Since it came up, this is probably a good time to discuss NAD. NAD is a sirtuin activating compound, or STAC. The discovery of it is an interesting story. Two British biochemists, Arthur Harden and William John Young, noticed that adding boiled and filtered yeast extract accelerated alcohol fermentation. It was later discovered that NAD cured black tongue disease in dogs, which is the equivalent of pellagra in humans, a disease that causes skin inflammation, diarrhea, dementia, mouth sores, and death. It turns out that NAD is a product of niacin, vitamin B3, and pellagra is described as a disease of niacin deficiency. NAD is not only used by sirtuins, but by over 500 enzymes. Without it, we would die. But moving on from booze and dogs, in the 1990s, two researchers discovered that NAD was fuel for sirtuins. Then in yeast experiments, it was discovered that a gene called PNC1 could turn vitamin B3 into NAD. Copied 4 times in yeast cells, PNC1 caused them to live 50% longer. When the SIRT gene was removed, this did not occur. So NAD activates sirtuins, and doing so increases lifespan, at least in yeast cells, which, as I mentioned before, share 23% of their DNA with humans. Then, in an experiment in which mice were given an NAD-boosting molecule, mice, the equivalent of age 65 in humans, were running so much that they broke a lab treadmill. It turns out the higher NAD levels were causing new blood vessels to form in muscle tissue, enhancing the delivery of oxygen. If NAD was a drug, it would be a wonder drug. If it was a food, it would be a superfood. What scientists saw in the mice was a reversal of the aging process. So that's what NAD is. We'll come back to it when we talk about future medicines and technologies in Part 8 of this series. The next type of longevity gene I want to talk about is target of rapamycin, or TOR. Rapamycin is now a drug that is used to prevent organ transplant rejection, a rare lung disease with an 11-syllable name, and certain tumors. It is being studied as a treatment for age-related diseases like cancer, obesity, atherosclerosis, and neurodegenerative diseases, dementia, among other things. Like sirtuins, mTOR, as it's called in mammals, can signal cells in stress to buckle down in survival mode. It boosts DNA repair, reduces inflammation, and digests old protein. It signals the production of protein in the exact amounts needed by the body. The other longevity gene is a metabolic control enzyme called AMPK, which stands for AMP-activated protein kinase. It detects low cellular energy levels and activates when stressed by hypoxia, hypoglycemia, mitochondrial poisons, or muscle contraction. It also restores energy balance by increasing glucose and fatty acid uptake and oxidation, inhibiting fat synthesis, enhancing mitochondrial biogenesis, and switching off energy-consuming processes. Exercise can activate AMPK, which may be one of the reasons why exercise can lead to weight loss. All of these defense systems are activated in response to biological stress, and you can see why they can be very beneficial to the body's health by resisting disease. As you'll see in the next 3 episodes, there are many ways to induce the right amount of stress, that which is enough to activate the longevity genes, putting cells into survival mode, and not so much as to cause cell damage. These are ways to increase our longevity by putting our body's natural defenses to work. So, don't miss these upcoming episodes. I hope you enjoyed this one. There are quite a few references I used in preparing this show, and as always, I've included those in the blog post at runningafever.com/391. Go there if you want to dig deeper than we have in this short time we have here. On that page, you can also watch the video or re-listen to the podcast while you're reading and researching. Sound like fun? Well, if you have the fever already, keep it burning, and if you don't, catch the fever, and I will see you next time on Running a Fever.